Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And this is actually our second try to do this interview. The first time we tried was when Zoom went down. Remember that a couple of weeks ago? Oh my gosh, what do we do when our world revolves around tech? But, I knew that we absolutely had to get my guest rescheduled. And so please join me in welcoming Will Henshall to our program today. Welcome, Will. How are you doing today?
Well, that's a wonderful, warm welcome. Thank you very much, Deb. I'm really happy to be here talking to you. Yeah, and we rely, by we, I'm talking about all of us now.
Right.
We rely on technology in a way that, if you really think about it, makes us vulnerable to all kinds of things.
Very vulnerable.
Right?
I have said, anybody ever wants to do damage to us, cut off our power, right? I'm in Atlanta. I'd have no air conditioning. And of course we'd have none of our tech, at least once the batteries died.
That's right.
But yeah,
That's
I mean,
right.
it's amazing. So, but you are a tech person, you use a lot of tech. So let me tell people a little bit more about you.
Okay.
So METAL.MEN partner CEO Will Henshall is a veteran startup entrepreneur, inventor, and an artist. He's an experienced personal growth leader specializing in men's work and is an equal left, right brain thinker, which means he can imagine, create, and then build those big picture visions. He founded the UK band Londonbeat in the early 90s and wrote the global #1 hit song, I've Been Thinking About You. In 1995, he founded San Francisco-based Rocket Network, which is a pro audio cloud collaboration. He sold it to Avid in 2003. In 2010, he started up Focus at Will, which is a music streaming for work, which has 2 million users today. So again, Will, welcome.
Yes, thank you. It's funny when you hear of the last sort of 35 years of life kind of condensed into
one. You're like, it's either really impressive or you're like, ooh, I should have done more, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have certainly accomplished a lot. So tell us a little bit more about how it is that you got to where you are today.
I come from a long line of British inventors and entrepreneurs.
Okay. Wait, you're British? I couldn't tell.
Yes, I'm British. I've been living here in the USA since 1983.
Okay.
So, nearly all my life, really. But if you leave the country that you grew up in above the age of like 12 or 13, you always have a slight accent.
Oh,
and
yeah.
if you leave when you're 21,
you're a Brit forever.
Yeah, my accent over the years has softened a little bit. The Brits think I have an American accent. Americans think I have a British accent. So it is what it is. It's never been a disadvantage.
Right.
But so yes, as you said in my intro here, I'm an artist and have been, and I've been a successful songwriter. Some of my songs are very well known. I've been thinking about you as the best known. It's one of the most played songs from the 90s on Golden Oldies radio now.
I know, it's scary when it becomes the golden oldies.
No, what?
Elevator music. I'm like, no.
That should be music from the 40s, 50s. But no, it's now the 90s. Yeah, if you've ever been to Home Depot, you've heard my songs. They really like playing them there. I've Been Thinking About You was #1 in every country in the world in the early 90s, 91, 90, 1991. I was the BMI PRS Songwriter of the Year in that back in the day. That was a fun time. And to be a successful musician, songwriter,
Mm-hmm.
you actually have to be an entrepreneur.
Right. Yeah, because
Right?
you're promoting yourself.
Right. Right. And so you have to think entrepreneurially about
Mm-hmm.
everything you're doing. You have to
Mm-hmm.
think about promoting. You have to make sure that you're writing songs that are going to
Mm-hmm.
work well on the radio,
Mm-hmm.
the right length, the
Mm-hmm.
right mix, the right
Mm-hmm.
sound, the right
Right.
lyric. You have to
Mm-hmm.
catch a wave, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Well, will people even like it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's many there's many pieces about having a
Mm-hmm.
successful music career.
Mm-hmm.
Still today, it's
Mm-hmm.
different than it was
Right.
because back in the day, you had to be signed to a major label. We were signed
Mm-hmm.
to MCA
Mm-hmm.
Records, and so yeah, we were part of the mainstream
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
music business.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good time.
Mm-hmm.
But today, with the influencer system and the
Mm-hmm.
way that artists release themselves,
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurial. It's
Mm-hmm.
about
Right.
ultimately like I got
Mm-hmm.
a widget, someone's interested in buying it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
That's how that
Mm-hmm.
works.
Mm-hmm.
So I started by saying that I come from a long line of British inventors.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to be a successful inventor, guess what? You got to be an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm. Again, you're
Not just
you're
like,
creating a product. Does
right,
somebody want it? Mm-hmm.
right. You know, there's an opportunity here because this door handle doesn't quite fit in this, da, 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 right? You know, this is the
Mm-hmm.
way my
Mm-hmm.
dad thinks.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, you know, my father, Russ Henshall, he invented a lot of things to do with recycling,
Oh,
glass recycling
okay.
products,
Mm-hmm.
and some medical technology and a
Mm-hmm.
few other
Mm-hmm.
things. My grandfather, on both sides, was involved in tech inventing back in
Mm-hmm.
the steam days of the radio
Mm-hmm.
and all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things. My brother, Matt Henshall, lives here in
Mm-hmm.
California, like I do, and
Mm-hmm.
he's a computer developer and
Okay.
invents stuff.
Okay.
So it's kind of part of my,
It's genetic.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's, you know, creating
Mm-hmm.
technology and
Mm-hmm.
creating music very similar. The
Mm-hmm.
first thing I did that was successful as a tech inventor
Mm-hmm.
was me and three other guys, the four
Mm-hmm.
of us in the mid 90s after I was in the band. I quit the band
Mm-hmm.
in 95. We got very interested in digital audio recording. Prior
Okay.
to that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you may have seen, you know, old footage of people in recording studios with
Mm-hmm.
these huge tape machines,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
then, you
Mm-hmm.
know, an orchestra, and then
Mm-hmm.
Ella Fitzgerald,
Mm-hmm.
and then, you know, with the all on tape.
Mm-hmm.
That changed in the 90s to be digitally recorded.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, if you wanted to, you know, in my band days, we would record an orchestra in London, and then we'd have to physically carry the tapes onto a plane.
Mm-hmm.
They were heavy
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
delicate and affected by magnetism.
Eek.
And then we'd go to New York
Mm-hmm.
to add some guitars, and then we
Mm-hmm.
go to Los Angeles to
Mm-hmm.
do a mix.
Mm-hmm.
That was always expensive,
Mm-hmm.
difficult, risky. I mean,
Time
these tapes are
consuming.
heavy,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
time, of course, you know. So in the early, it would have been about 93, 94, I got really interested in the early days of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually been online due to my brother's,
Mm-hmm.
you know, helping me since the mid 80s. But there were still modems,
Mm-hmm.
very slow.
Mm-hmm.
AOL, you've got mail.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody remember that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's funny, heard that thousands of times.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to think, well, you know, I think there is going to be what became broadband.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's going to be a way to push more bits and bytes
Mm-hmm.
down this pipe. It won't
Mm-hmm.
have to be
Right.
the
Mm-hmm.
modem thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be always on. At the time, it was DSL,
Mm-hmm.
and then there was dedicated
Mm-hmm.
lines. There's a few other things that were really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
At my office in London back then, this was in 1995 or
Mm-hmm.
6 when I was just starting the tech business. We put a 128K line in, and it was
Mm-hmm.
$100,000 a year back
Whoa.
then. I
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa. But what we were doing was the very early version of transferring digital audio
Mm-hmm.
bits around.
Mm-hmm.
And so Rocket Network developed a system for musicians and the movie business with film sound to
Mm-hmm.
be able to securely transfer sessions that previous to this were on tape and transfer them around down the pipes. And I just had a hunch. I think this process is going to be exponentially easier over time. So my 128K line, by the way, today, that would be like,
it'd be going
it's not even working.
again.
That then became 500K line, then it became a 1 meg line, which was like super fast. And we developed a system which securely allowed recording studios to have an orchestra in London, a guitarist in New York, and a mix engineer in Los Angeles, all at the same time by shipping the files around. And we raised a lot of money, $48 million in total, $46 million. Paul Allen came in, he put in 18 million, and a few other big players. And we developed the world's first remote collaboration system for audio and video.
Wow.
Sold the company to Avid in 2003. So yeah, that was very much an entrepreneurial journey.
Definitely.
I would describe it as that.
Yeah. Even though you're talking big dollars, it was still an idea that you had and you said, hey, let's do this.
Yeah. Yeah, it was called Digi Delivery. And
catchy.
That's where it came from. Go figure. And it became the underpinning of the Avid and DigiDesign Pro Tools remote collaboration system. These are the systems that if someone's in audio and media, editing video, they're very familiar with the tools. So yeah, I got, I think, 5 patents at the time with the guys. And so that was my entrepreneurial journey. On the one hand, the band, and then that led into the technology. And since then, Deb, I've never actually had a job. I kind of did when we sold Rocket Network. I had to go and work at Avid for 18 months.
Oh, okay. To help them with it. And
yeah, I became a senior network engineer there.
You didn't have to put a suit on, did you?
No. Okay. But I found it challenging because prior to then, I'd got 70 employees, and our first clients for what we did were the first Harry Potter movie and Lord of the Rings. Those were the first 2 movies that used the system. So, we'd been working at a pretty decent level and bringing in dollars into what was still the startup at that stage, but having a job. And
reporting to someone else. That's the tricky part.
Now you've stepped on the third rail. Yeah. Yep. No, I wasn't aware of this. Call me naive moving, when the company got bought. That on my first day in, I had an office in the office in Daly City here in California. And I sat in my office and they were like, yep, daily meeting with us. I'm like, okay. And I found that I was reporting to some mid-level manager somewhere
who probably had never done anything like what you were doing.
It was challenging. I had to learn. It was actually very interesting because the Avid developer team were the best in the world. These were developers, men and women who had been hired because of their skill and expertise. And I've been around some very talented developers and software managers in my own business, but I'd never been plugged into a machine like the Avid tech had. And I learned it was like doing an MBA in 6 months. I learned a ton about due process. I learned a ton about specification. I learned a ton about market fit. It was really, it was something that I still today, I find myself thinking of things in ventures I'm involved in now that really I learned so much. But the managing up and managing down in a company with like many hundreds of employees, I found difficult because they'd ask me what I think and I just tell them what I think because I'm used to being the boss. I'm like, no, this isn't going to work. You got to do this, this, and this. And they'd look at me. They're like, no, you don't understand. This is what we're doing.
Yeah, we didn't really want your opinion.
We're just being polite. I'm like, well, why did you ask me?
Yeah, Yeah.
In fact, if you do ask me, this
And
whole
then, of
project
course,
was a
when
stupid
you were,
idea. I
yeah,
wouldn't
and
even
then
do
when
this
you were
stuff.
right, that was probably even worse.
Yeah,
Mhm, mhm,
yeah. So again, the secret that I found being in a mid-level management position myself, well, a senior management position
mhm,
myself there
mhm,
while I was working there, was that you've got to think entrepreneurially
mhm,
always.
mhm.
And
Right.
you can end up in a place where you're kind of comfortable and you're managing people, you're managing up to the
Mhm,
people who you're managing
mhm,
down, and you're comfortable, but you're at risk
mhm.
if market conditions change.
Right. Mhm,
And guess what? That happens all the time, usually
mhm,
when you
mhm.
least expect it, right?
Right. Mhm, mhm. Right. And yeah,
Mm.
and so you always have to be, as you said, in that entrepreneurial mindset, the if this doesn't work, then what kind of
Yeah,
stage.
that's right. That's right. And the tech business and the software
Mhm,
business has a unique value prop because the product, once it's made, if it's a pure software
mhm.
product, has no cost,
Right.
really.
It's
It's
done.
not like
Mhm, mhm,
making a car.
mhm,
You got the unit cost, you got
mhm,
the economics of
mhm,
that, you've got the supply chain. There's a lot of
mhm,
complexity, and
mhm,
then you've got to have regulation. You got to
mhm,
fit that. Where are you
mhm,
going to sell shipping? It's a
mhm,
very, very complex business.
mhm,
But a company like Microsoft,
mhm,
they're selling a software product, so
mhm,
all the cost is human
mhm.
IP
Right.
level cost,
And it's
and
all up
then
front.
all up front.
Mhm,
And constantly the cost of maintaining the code
mhm,
is a thing.
mhm,
But you sell 1,000 copies or 1,000,000
mhm,
copies, the cost
mhm,
is the cost is the cost.
mhm.
And
Right.
so, the what's been really interesting for me watching the last sort of since the 90s, the last 30 years
Mhm,
now of the tech business and how, you know, social media
mhm,
came along and how the browser changed things.
mhm,
It's been watching how we as business people and consumers have been subtly impacted by
mhm,
the technology.
mhm,
And we've had to move the way we do things into new areas
mhm.
because we got to keep up. And
Right.
not always for the best,
Mhm, mhm.
right?
Yeah. AI is probably the best example of that, right?
Right,
You know, and
right.
and and it's I mean, it's amazing how quickly things really did advance. You know,
Yeah,
once they started going. I was speaking. I've gotten somehow tied in with a high school in Pakistan, and
right.
they love interviewing me, and it's so much fun. I mean, like they're 11 to 16 years old, and they're very polite, ask very good questions, and they ma'am me to death. But I told one of them, I said, I never touched a computer until I was in college. And I might as well have told him, and it was handled by a dinosaur, right? He just had no grasp of that. And even then, it was a dumb terminal, right? So we just had a keyboard and a monitor and this little cable that went snaking off into the computer room.
Mm-hmm.
And you had the room that had the raised floors because you had to run air conditioning under it because it was,
Uh-huh.
it would overheat. And that was a while ago, but once things started going, I mean, once they developed, the personal computer, I think that's where things really started accelerating so quickly. And then just in the last 5-10 years, and AI, now we've had AI for a lot longer than a lot of people think. For one thing, when you said, "Hey Siri, take me," no, that was AI, right? And so all sorts of things like that. But the change just in the last 3-ish years has been incredible. And it is all based really an awful lot on AI,
Yeah.
and all of those things.
There's this thing called exponential growth,
Mhm,
which I know you talk about.
mhm,
And exponential growth is something that we humans don't really understand because we're used to thinking one step ahead of
Right.
us and then one next step after that.
And we might think a little ahead, but not
Not
exponentially.
exponentially, no, where every step is twice the size of the step
Mm-hmm.
before. Peter Diamandis, who best-selling author, writes about abundance and is the founder of Singularity University, which I attended back in 2012. They became investors in one of my other startups I'll talk about in a minute. And they talk about how exponential growth in technology, particularly when things become digital, get put into software, means that we find it almost impossible to look ahead and see how things are going to change. And that's what's happening with the curve. When a product is exponential, it means that there's a deceptive phase. So if you're thinking in, say, millions, if you think about a scale that's like, say, 10 million, if you are going 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, it looks like a flat line.
Right.
Because your scale is millions, right? So it's 32, 64, you're still a flat line, 1,000, but all of a sudden, you're going to get to 500,000, and that's now the hockey stick.
Right. Yeah. It shoots up, and you're like,
right?
holy schmoly.
Oh, where did that come from? Well, guess what? It's been in the deceptive phase a long time.
Right.
Now, from a business perspective, that means that we're often broadsided by things that if you've been able to know and dive in, you'd have been able to see, oh, there's something coming. I personally was very intrigued with the way that digital advertising was starting back in the 90s.
Right.
I was a very early Amazon book customer. I used to buy books on Amazon. So I've been on Amazon since 1997, maybe.
It was still in his garage.
Yeah, but it was great. I could look at the book very quickly. I could read the first few pages and I could order it and it would arrive tomorrow. Right? So the way that digital advertising of all kinds has impacted our lives is it's unthinkable about how we used to do it. There was a Sears catalog when we were kids, right?
Right.
Oh,
and you went through and you dog-eared the pages, right?
Right. Right. Yeah. And then you'd fill the form in and then send them a check and then,
Or worse, you went to the store.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I used to meet people to go into the store, best thing ever. But I think that especially today, as you were saying with the AI, it's incredibly difficult to know where things are going. Right.
And I think part of that is we get scared.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. You don't know where to look. And AI is changing so fast because it's in the hockey stick, just going faster and faster. And, we live in very uncertain political times. And I'll tell you a story. I met Richard Branson in the UK. I was working as a music producer in 1986, 5 or 6, and there was a huge recession at the time. Margaret Thatcher was the prime minister in the UK. There was a strike. It was a really tough time. There was a time of great austerity, and it was a really bleak and dark time. People were broke. It was awful. And I met Richard Branson the year that he'd started Virgin. He started Virgin Records and he started, I think, Virgin Rail or Virgin Train, one of his other companies that became incredibly successful. And I said, it's really nice to meet you. And he's got the voice, the Richard Branson voice. Right? Yeah, you can hear his in your head. I said, why on earth did you why did you do this now? And he goes, in times of adversity, there's incredible opportunity. He said, he said, there's a big pile of SH1T, and if you know where to look, you can find the gold. And that has stayed with me. So right now we're in this time of extraordinary political uncertainty, societal uncertainty. This is the time where there is extraordinary opportunity if
Right.
you know where to look.
Right. And it is scary. I mean, because we all grew up watching the science fiction movies, right? Whether it's Terminator or Space Odyssey, all of those various things where the computers take over. And like I said, I mean, I didn't even touch a computer till I was 18, 19 years old. And now we've gone into especially AI, which just in the last even 6 months has gotten so personal. I mean, and that's the funny thing. I'm looking here on. So I'm developing a new product that we're offering, and I've been using Chat GPT a lot. I mean, I'm as and now to me it is a tool, right? It's not just hey, we're gonna do this whole thing, but the responses that I get from it are very lifelike, which is very scary. And so it was funny. I was working on something the other day and I told it, okay, it's the end of the day. I need to stop and rest. I'll pick this up tomorrow. And so that was the stupid thing is, first of all, I'm apologizing to Chat GPT. And I know people have named their Chat GPT. So that's even worse. And so, not only did it say, that's okay. So I said, I'm going to call it a day and give my brain a rest. And it responded, you have absolutely earned that brain break. You've been on fire today with the emoji, right? Seriously, the level of thought, energy, and momentum that you're bringing to this chef's kiss. Right? I mean, all of this, and then it goes on, gushy, gushy, funny, funny, right? 6 months ago, it would have not done that. Now I do have the paid version of Chat GPT, but it doesn't really make that much difference. And I think that is then where people are getting scared because it is acting and sounding very human, which obviously just means the programmers are really, really good. But yeah, it's, and then if you are in particularly the fields where you are, the entertainment world, is it going to start writing all the scripts? Is it going to, are we going to have complete AI movies? Now, we've certainly had computer generated for many years. I was in junior high when Star Wars came out, right? That was not real, folks. I hate to break it to you. That was not real. And so we've had all of those things. And we look at them now and we're like, okay, wow. But the fact that it can now do so many things. And screenwriters, obviously, people like graphic designers, that's got to be just incredibly scary for them.
Yes and no is
Right.
the answer to that question. I want to address something you said about ChatGPT in particular. There are multiple competitors to that, but they're all doing the same thing. What worries me is a lot of people take what the system says as golden truth.
Right. Yes.
This is what it's saying. It must be true. And I've been doing a project on a new startup recently, which is a new type of bass musical instrument. And over the years, I've got involved in electronics design. I know about how electronic circuits work. I've learned a lot about recording studio, professional audio equipment.
Right.
So
you needed to know how all that worked.
Yeah. I have a working knowledge of how electronic circuits work. So a couple of times in the last couple of weeks, I've reached out to to ChatGPT, through Claude, there's several of them. And I've said, I need help designing this circuit. It's three capacitors, it's a resistor, it's a transistor, it's an op amp, and I've already got a kind of a functional design for it. And so I've uploaded my rough drawing of it, and it has said, that's really good, well done, you're a superstar. I'm like, what? I don't need you to be saying that, the system anyway.
I see, that's the weird part.
And then I've said, suggest some ways to optimize this design for me. And so it's done some suggestions. I know by just looking at it, that won't work.
Right. Right.
It absolutely won't work. This is
mhm,
bluntly, it's nonsense.
mhm,
And so I'm like, okay, this isn't. I know from
mhm,
my domain knowledge this isn't going to
mhm.
work. Can you fix it? He goes, oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, you're right. Thanks for calling me out on it. And I just had this insane conversation with this
Yeah,
Chat
with
GPT,
the
giving
computer.
me more and more and
Mhm,
more wrong information
mhm,
about this
right.
kind of simple
Mhm,
thing.
mhm,
And that worries me. And I know it'll get better in time,
mhm,
but we are being
mhm,
manipulated a little bit
mhm,
by the system
mhm.
today, and it concerns me over
Right.
time.
Mhm,
I've got one of my colleagues in one of my businesses writes almost everything in ChatGPT and then
mhm,
sends it as a copied email,
mhm,
and I can always tell
mhm.
there's a
Right.
lack of
It's
authenticity
it's
about this.
a little too. I mean, like I, the way it was gushing.
Right.
That's
Something about it,
no
right?
person would say that now. I'm guessing they'll fix that, right?
I
Because people are going, that's
presume.
too much.
But do you
Mhm,
remember back in the day, we'd see, Life magazine
mhm,
back in the
mhm,
80s or any, Reader's Digest or anything.
mhm,
You could look at an ad
mhm.
and you knew it was an airbrushed photo
Right.
of the
Yeah.
car,
Yeah.
of the
Hmm.
dress,
Hmm.
of the
Yeah.
beer. You
Yeah. I'm
knew it
sorry,
was a
those supermodels did not look
right.
like that.
Did not look like that, right?
Hmm.
So we
Hmm.
had this kind of sixth
Hmm.
sense
Hmm.
when we
Right.
looked at stuff.
Hmm.
We knew it was an
Hmm.
ad. It's an ad,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And then you
Right.
see editorial,
Hmm.
right? And you go,
Hmm.
that's a photograph,
Hmm.
right? And so we humans have this ability to sense
Hmm.
authenticity.
Hmm.
And I am starting to develop my own sense of authenticity when I read something or I see
Hmm.
something that has been generated.
Hmm.
And I think that we will all develop
Hmm.
that. You just said it yourself.
Hmm.
It's just something about it. And it'll
Hmm.
get really good,
Hmm.
right? It's the
Right.
uncanny alley.
Hmm.
It's the asymptomatic curve,
Hmm.
where the
Hmm.
curve of reality gets closer and closer
Hmm.
and more impressive, but it
Right.
doesn't quite
Yeah.
ever
As long as it doesn't
reach.
call me Hal, I'm okay, right?
So, to go back to your question, what do I think about AI generated
Hmm.
scripts, movie
Hmm.
scripts,
Hmm.
and music? There's
Hmm.
systems that you can do.
Hmm.
It's very impressive
Hmm.
initially,
Right.
very
Hmm.
impressive.
Hmm.
But if you think about artists that have
Hmm.
really changed things, think
Hmm.
about Twin Peaks
Hmm.
as a movie.
Hmm.
Think about
Right.
right. You
Hmm.
think about things like Andy Warhol,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, just where you're
There's
thinking they got a little screw loose, right?
right, and the art that they've made comes from someone like Twin Peaks.
Hmm. Hmm.
It was made
Right.
by looking into the top right hand corner of the room and thinking out of the
Hmm.
box in a
Hmm.
way that
Hmm. Right.
the way that humans
Hmm.
need. We need a
Hmm.
storyteller who can be
Hmm.
like, oh, Paul McCartney, he didn't write, he just sat down and that
Hmm.
just stuff happened.
Hmm.
And in my own career as a songwriter, the
Hmm.
success I've had, I've no idea how I did it, Deb. I
Hmm.
just sat down with a guitar and it just happened. I
I
can't
love
really.
that. I love that. Yeah. And it is that human touch.
Uh-huh.
I'm a huge Star Trek fan, right? Love all of them,
Uh-huh.
and I
A
remember,
Trekkie. I love
yeah,
it.
I know I'm a Trekkie. Now I don't do ears, I don't do conventions, all those things. But I remember one of the episodes with Next Generation where Data, the android, was playing the violin, and and he played, and afterwards, people gush, 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 and he didn't like it. And somebody said, "Why didn't you like it?" And he said, "Because it was perfect." And somebody said, "Well, yes." And he said, "No. What makes it human are the little errors, whether it's a fingering error or the wrong note or whatever." And that's where you go, oh, and we know, speed up the tempo, slow down the tempo, as we're feeling it, not feeling it. I mean, think of a dancer where they do things. And I, maybe I am off, but I don't think computers will ever get to that level.
There are ways in the recording studio now of humanizing
Mm-hmm.
machine takes
Mm-hmm.
of things.
Mm-hmm. You
And
give it an error.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and it's pretty good. But again, it it feels, you're like, okay, it's not quite there. I
Right.
think that there's going to be, I think there's going to be a renaissance happening. I'm already starting to see it of human-made art. It's like craft beers, right?
Right. Right.
Or craft cheeses,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
you go to Portland, you
Mhm.
don't drink if you're a beer drinker and you're in Portland, you do not drink Michelob or
No,
Bud
no.
Light. No, no. There's a local beer
Mhm.
that's made by these guys with the
Mhm.
beards and the
Mhm.
funny looking thing, and
Mhm.
they're over there. That's
Mhm.
what you do.
Mhm.
And so I'm already starting to see
Mhm.
a younger generation of musicians in particular, and poets
Mhm.
coming through who their art is entirely human.
Mhm.
It's about technique.
Mhm.
It's about, if you look on YouTube for some of the younger, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 year
Mhm.
old musicians, there's
Mhm.
some phenomenal players.
Mhm.
Good Lord.
Right.
And they've been
They're the
able to
little
learn,
Mozarts.
right,
Mhm.
little baby Mozarts. Yeah. And so I think that there's going to be a renaissance,
Mhm.
inevitable
Mhm.
sort of backlash
Right.
against the AI
Mhm.
generated art.
Mhm.
And it may well prove to be one of the most
Mhm.
important drivers of
Mhm.
new,
Mhm.
extraordinary art that's
Mhm.
ever happened, because the AI is omnipresent and
Mhm.
incredibly
Mhm.
impressive. I think it's a little bit like, if you eat food with too much MSG in it,
Mhm.
an hour later you're hungry again.
Mhm. Right. Mhm. Mhm.
It
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
satisfy your
Mhm.
soul in
Mhm.
the same way.
Mhm.
I never say never,
Mhm.
but
Right.
I
Well, and
think
I
a
think
lot of,
that's why people don't like when performers lip sync.
yes.
Now, there's
Oh, yeah.
obviously reasons for it. I mean, you're singing the national anthem at the Super Bowl. You are not going to risk doing it live. And
Aretha Franklin
that's
would have done
true.
it and did do it live.
And Whitney Houston, right? People like that.
Whitney, hello.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
but again, when there were those subtle errors, you
Hmm.
loved it, right? They,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
um, but we know, we pick up on, oh, wait, their mouth didn't do what it should have,
Right.
and
Right.
things like that, or how did they do that without ever breathing, and all of those. But yeah, like you said, we look for that human part.
Yeah. If I can bring the convo to the thing I'm doing these days,
Oh,
which
yes.
is, um, if you're watching this, you can see
Mhm.
there's a logo behind me
Yes, it
called
says
Metal.
metal.
Talking
Hmm.
of humans,
Hmm.
Metal is a men's group,
Hmm.
and it stands for Media, Entertainment, Technology, Artists, and Leadership.
See, I didn't know it was an acronym. Hmm.
It's an acronym:
Hmm.
Media, Entertainment,
Hmm.
Technology, Artists, and
Hmm.
Leadership. This is an organization that's been going for 23 years now.
Wow.
It started by my partner, Ken
Hmm.
Rakowski,
Hmm.
who is an amazing host and
Hmm.
interviewer.
Hmm.
And he started this in 2001 as
Hmm.
an in-person event here in Los Angeles.
Ah.
And they used to meet once a
Hmm.
week
Hmm.
and have a speaker.
Hmm.
I joined the organization as a member in 2000, late 2009,
Hmm.
early
Hmm.
2010. And I didn't know at the time. I was invited by one of the existing METAL.MEN. Our
Hmm.
website, by the way, is metal.men.
Hmm.
And I didn't realize how important it was to have men in my
Hmm.
life who I didn't work with,
Hmm.
who I had no business relationship with,
Hmm.
who just got to know me as a brother,
Hmm.
who could be my North Star on
Hmm.
personal
Hmm.
and professional decisions,
Hmm.
and who are intelligent and
Hmm.
accomplished.
Hmm. Right.
And so from then until 3 years ago, I was a member of the
Hmm.
organization. Ken needed some help with running the
Hmm.
organization. So 3 years ago,
Hmm.
do you remember the Remington shaver ad? The guy goes,
Hmm.
"I liked it so much, I
I
bought the
bought the
company."
company.
Yeah, it's a little like that. I said to Ken, "Yeah, I'll help you. I'll
Hmm.
help you grow metal." And we due to the pandemic, really, we changed from being a once a week meeting on a Saturday morning at a theater in Los Angeles with a local speaker and Ken on stage. So a little like a classic David Letterman talk
Mm-hmm.
show format,
Mm-hmm.
members only.
Mm-hmm.
And we changed to be an online
Mm-hmm. Right.
org
And
when obviously,
worldwide.
and then it
Mm-hmm.
became worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the pandemic started to settle down
Mm-hmm.
a couple of years ago, we then started meeting in person regionally again,
Mm-hmm.
and we do get-togethers.
Mm-hmm.
There's many hundred men in the group
Mm-hmm.
now, and we're a men's group because we are men, are
Mm-hmm.
much better men when we're in the company of other
Mm-hmm.
good men. A rising tide floats all boats,
Mm-hmm.
and we're better husbands and business partners and just humans
Mm-hmm.
when we're able to go into the cave with the
Mm-hmm.
other guys.
Mm-hmm.
And, 20% of our membership comes in from a recommendation from their wives or girlfriends,
I love it.
friends.
Mm-hmm.
My wife will say,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey," she's out with one of her friends. She'll go,
Mm-hmm.
"Your husband should
You
come to
really
this
should
men's
be
group.
part
My
of this.
husband."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about something called masculine intelligence, which sounds like some crazy thing, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's simple.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, we did a big research project on this recently. There are 8 core principles that successful men have in common.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go to METAL.MEN, the website, you can see there's a book we've done. It's a series of interviews with some of our renowned metal men. We have guys like Nolan Bushnell and Jim Quick, the memory expert, and Dr. Michael Bruce, who's
I know. I was looking at. I was like, "Holy schmoly!"
Yeah, we got some good guys on it. And my favorite metal man of all, Chris Voss, never split the difference. He's a metal man and is in the book interviews. And what's really interesting is that the guiding principles that came out from, to cut a long story short, we did a research project. We had 450 guys, and I wanted to know, what do successful men have in common? And then there's got to be some guiding principles. And then do those guiding principles then work for everybody? And the answer is they do. I'll tell you what they are if you like.
Yes, please.
So the first one is, we are all curious. I can tell just talking to you now, you're a curious human.
Yes. I'm one of the 3-year-olds saying, "Why?
Why?" Yeah. We'll get on the plane and we're not bored. We're just curious. We'll be like opening the flight magazine.
What's this do?
What is that?
My husband will say, "Stop touching things."
We're curious. The next thing is, we are creative. So this is a literal thing that happened recently. I was on a plane. I was looking at the flight magazine and I read something about bats. And I was like, that is so interesting. I didn't know this about bats. And then I get off the plane. I'm like looking at bats. And then I find out some other thing. And now I'm like, it's led me down this whole path about finding out about this kind of marsupial and why we only, I was just like fascinating because I'm curious and creative. So you find out about something and then you're creative about that thing. You look for an opportunity if you're a business person. We're resilient. It's the third thing. We're like little terriers.
You just keep going.
Don't just keep up. But then you've got to know when to fold them and when to hold them. Right? You've got to know when, okay, this idea is, its time has come, or let's make it happen. Integrity is important in business.
Very important. Yep.
In your 20s, you can survive skating through some stuff, but as you get older, you realize your word is your bond as the company. What's the promise?
Right.
Successful men need to be around other successful men for a lot of reasons. Brotherhood. You need to have guys that you trust, as I was saying earlier, that you don't necessarily have a business relationship with.
And it's funny because women do that very much so.
Of course. Yeah. And that's a given. And not enough men are, it's actually increasingly available to men. You'll find that there is a local men's group. But if the men's group is a business group, it can become a networking group.
Yes.
Right. I'm here to make contacts, to get business.
And if you can't give me business, I'm not going to be here.
Right. So metal is all about members helping members. You know, what guys find when they join the group is, I don't know, we help you solve your problems, and the guys in the group will help you, you know, create your dreams and introduce you to people. Do you get business from being in metal? Absolutely. Yeah. You'll get loads of business, but it's not like a networking situation.
Right.
Next thing is successful men and successful people. You have to have financial literacy. And I am often surprised by talking to someone who doesn't understand you got to get money, grow money, and then and then you got to make money, you got to keep money, you got to grow money. It's very simple. It's actually very simple. And money is simply energy. And when you think of it as an exchange for value and energy, you realize, just relax, do the right thing, make the right decisions,
The energy
have
will
financial
come.
literacy. Yeah. And then success will come. You know, the success, you know, that thing about being in the right place at the right time and knowing it, you got to make sure you're in the right place.
Are you
at the
in
right time.
and willing to learn, right? Be there and be willing.
Yeah. Career development is the sixth of the eight principles. That means you got to have a mentor. You've got to have had coaches. You've got to be aware that you don't know it all, and things change, right? If you have friends who are physicians, they're always learning because there's always medical advances, and they're always like, oh, there's a new thing happening, you know. And then the last thing is this: work-life balance.
Yep.
We, especially if we're in business, you've got to keep a handle on your work-life balance. You know, we were talking earlier on about how with AI and the technology ever advancing ever quicker, and you're sitting on your computer, you're at work, and you're just trying to keep up with the barrage of information. And yet in your personal life, you've got to slow down. Literally smell the roses. Literally drink the coffee. Literally stop with your dog. Sit and be still.
Yeah. Spend time with your kids.
When your kids, I'm an empty nester. When you're out with your friends, or when I see my son, no cell phones at dinner. Put them away.
It can wait.
Yes, it doesn't matter. And so this kind of balance between the ever-increasing speed of technology and AI is making it even more insane, and then just learning to disconnect. Go to a game. Don't put one earphone in while you're listening to something. No, be present at the game, right? Go to a concert. Don't hold your phone up like everyone else. Just be at the concert.
Just absorb.
Yeah. So we find that being conscious of your work-life balance. Listen, having said that, when you are an entrepreneur and you're in a startup world, there are times when you got to put
it doesn't balance.
You got to know that, they're going to be 80-hour weeks for a period. But if you keep doing that, you'll burn out and you won't be able to survive.
Yeah. So, literally. I mean, you know, you're going to, your health, your mental health, your physical health will suffer.
Yes. And you will not be able to sustain the dream that you're trying to create here.
Right.
You need to know that you're a finite resource. You need to get your sleep, keep yourself healthy, keep yourself fit.
Right. Yeah.
So,
you know, and I think especially, you know, the 90s, all of that was when we saw so many men who were workaholics. You know, and they'd be astounded when they'd go home and their kids didn't even live there anymore, right? Because they'd grown up and moved away. Or worse, they had heart attacks and things like that. And they might have had an extremely successful business, but that was it. You know, and so, you know, and Now, granted, we all have our own rhythms and things, and those change as we age. That's always kind of one of those things that amazes me. But when I hear somebody like Elon Musk say he only sleeps 4 hours a night, it obviously works for him. But to me, that rest, that downtime is when your body recharges. And when your body recharges, then your brain recharges. And if you're always thinking, gotta go, gotta go, gotta go, gotta go, whether it's business or personal, you will burn out after a while.
That's true. Burnout is, in the metal group, we're very conscious of keeping each other lined up. And if a guy is, if one of the guys I know is, you can sense when someone's burned out, they're kind of glazed over. And we'll take each other aside and go, hey, what's going on?
Right.
The single thing that I have, I'm a co-host of the metal group. And so I talk to a lot of the guys in the group and new guest members. If anyone's listening to this as a guy and you want to come and check it out, just
there's a button. It says free guest pass.
Free guest pass. You get 3 weeks on the system. Come and meet us. But there's the single thing which in terms of like not burning out and being happy, is purpose. Men need purpose,
right,
of some kind. Now it can be different. Your purpose may be, I want to be a great dad,
and
I want to support my family. Fantastic, go. Your purpose might be, I want to change the world. I want to make a new kind of battery that does this. It may be, my purpose is to create an inner city youth group that helps disadvantaged kids. Whatever your purpose is, you need to find purpose. When a guy comes into metal, there's a group run by Craig Filek, and he has a system called purpose mapping. You can look this up. It's called purpose mapping. And it's a way of, especially when you get into midlife, it's a way of reminding yourself where your North Star is, because you can get kind of lost.
Right. Oh, yeah, because society tells you have to be one way. Your friends, your family tell you all of those things. And it may or may not be where you really want to be.
Yeah, sometimes you look up and you realize the goalposts have moved.
Yeah, you're like, or there's not even any goalposts. They've completely moved.
Right.
And it's so interesting because, when I was looking at your group, my first thought was, why? Right. Why do men need a group like this? Very scoffing, right? And then, of course, my next thought was, it's because men are, especially, older gentlemen, not our generation alphas, whatever they are, those itty bitty, they were raised to be independent and not ever ask for help or admit that they needed help. And so that was what really intrigued me about your group, whether it's personal, whether it's professional, like you were saying, people might need, new business contacts, or they also might need somebody to talk to them. Right. And men don't have, women do, right? Women, we strike up conversations with the people at Starbucks. My husband's always dumbfounded. He's like, did you know those people? No. I just went up and started talking to them. Right. And they're always, somebody comes up and is always talking to me about my hair color. It's the funniest thing in the world. But men don't do that. Because you were taught, even, because sports are obviously a big analogy, but even in sports, you were still the quarterback, the captain, the whatever, you might have been part of a team, but it was still very independent. And then, of course, we had obviously the individual sports, and so that was what I really liked about it. I thought, okay, it's time that men have that support, because, like I said, women have had that forever.
You've really put your finger on something which is a key part of why metal exists, which is exactly that, that it's been incredibly difficult for men globally, as you get into your late 40s, early 50s, to meet other guys, to be able to talk to about this.
Right.
And typically a new guy will come in, and when a guest member comes along, one of us will reach out to them and just say, hello, how are you? How can we help you?
Oh, I love it.
right? And that one of the kind of the common themes here is that a guy will say, you know, I'm let's say I work in fashion.
Hmm.
you know, I run
Hmm.
a clothes business. The only other people I met, the other men I meet
Hmm.
are in my business. So I
Hmm.
meet a few lawyers, I
Right.
meet a
Hmm.
few, you know, but I
Hmm.
meet people who are in business, in the
Hmm.
apparel business, and
Hmm.
I don't know any guys who are not
Hmm.
in my business.
Right.
And so you develop kind of friendships, but they're
Hmm.
really, really colleague-based friendships.
Right.
They're
And they
business
might
friendships,
even be competitors.
right?
Hmm.
So when you come into the metal group, all of a sudden you'll meet guys who are as successful as you are from
Hmm.
different worlds,
Hmm.
different
Right.
cultures, different
Right. Hmm.
backgrounds, different countries.
Hmm.
And that is so important to be able to
Hmm.
say, yeah, I've got a teenage kid who's got a drug
Hmm.
problem,
Hmm.
or, you know, and someone else will go, dude, I have no idea how it happened. So do I.
Hmm.
I'm like, I know he was such a
Hmm.
great kid. I'm
Hmm.
just making this up, but this is a
Yeah.
typical
And poof,
conversation,
all of a sudden. Hmm. Hmm.
right? And, or, you know, I've inherited, this is something I happened recently. A guy
Hmm.
said, I've been part of a family business. It's a
Hmm.
small business,
Hmm.
you know, manufacturing, da da da.
Hmm.
I've been in this for a long time, and now my dad's passed away and now I'm
Hmm.
running it. I don't like doing it.
Yeah. I didn't want
But
to
I've got all
be
these people that
Sanford and
rely on me.
Son.
All these people rely on me, and what am I
Hmm.
doing? How
Hmm.
can I change my
Hmm.
life?
Hmm.
You know?
Right.
And
And the
so,
expectation is for in a situation like that, buck up. That is the way you were raised. Um,
yeah. Your dad
and
worked all these years to give the company to you, and here you
yes,
are, and
how dare
you're
you? Hmm.
ungrateful.
Hmm.
You're
Right,
like,
right.
oh,
Yeah.
oh
You
no.
know, and sometimes it might be a shift in perspective where you think, okay, and maybe I was talking to somebody the other day and they said they discovered they just really didn't want to be CEO. Same type of thing, and so they hired a CEO
Yep.
and he went back to doing what he loved,
Yeah.
and everybody benefited. And but I'm sure people were like, well, what do you mean you don't want to be the CEO? You're supposed to be the CEO. It's like,
Your dad was the CBO,
yeah,
CEO. You know,
grandpa was the CEO. Yeah, all of those things.
we have guys in the group who are part of the EOS, the Entrepreneur's Operating System. I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
know about that.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of guys who are EOS
Mm-hmm.
implementers who are very, very wise.
Mm-hmm.
A guy called Will Christ, in particular, is a
Mm-hmm.
regular METAL.MEN.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks a lot about how you can end up in a situation running a business
Mm-hmm.
where you're sitting in the wrong seat, exactly what you've
Mm-hmm.
just said.
Mm-hmm.
You end up in the CEO seat
Right.
because no one else
Mm-hmm.
was there to do it. And
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of sort of 70% as good as a
Mm-hmm.
career CEO would
Mm-hmm.
be. So you can
Mm-hmm.
kind of keep the wheels on,
You can
but you're
fake
just
it.
not happy. You're
Mm-hmm.
not happy.
Mm-hmm.
So in your example,
Mm-hmm.
yes, get a, have
Mm-hmm.
so one of the metal guys will be like, dude, have you thought
Mm-hmm.
about getting an operator
Mm-hmm.
in so that
Right.
you can be the
Mm-hmm.
visionary,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And
be
whatever
happy?
title is that you give to them, why
Hmm.
can't you do that?
Hmm. Yeah, I think we're driven by fear a lot
Mm-hmm.
and by
Mm-hmm.
obligations.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
if if you're in a situation where your dad was CEO and you inherited the
Mm-hmm.
business, your obligation
Mm-hmm.
to your
Mm-hmm.
dad's not here now,
Right.
and you got to live
He's
your
not
own
going to
life.
strike you with lightning, maybe,
No,
hopefully.
no, no.
Yeah.
And so these are all really good
Mm-hmm.
examples of the way the Metal Men
Mm-hmm.
organization helps
Mm-hmm.
men in midlife and
Mm-hmm.
beyond. We've got
Mm-hmm.
the age range of the group is sort of a handful of guys in their early mid
Mm-hmm.
30s. As you get into your sort of late 30s,
Mm-hmm.
40s, we've got a good group of guys
Mm-hmm.
in that area.
Mm-hmm.
So these are guys who are sort of on an aspirational, you know,
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurial
Mm-hmm.
journey. Some of them have achieved,
Mm-hmm.
and then we got some really wise older guys.
Mm-hmm. The
Really,
true mentors. Mm-hmm.
Nolan Bushnell, who
Mm-hmm.
literally
Mm-hmm.
invented the video game.
Mm-hmm.
That guy.
Oh
He's a
my
regular
gosh.
member.
Uh-huh.
He's
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
Mm-hmm.
He's 83,
Mm-hmm.
wise, wise, and
Mm-hmm.
wise. And so hearing his story of what he's
Mm-hmm.
been through, guys like Chris Voss, who
Mm-hmm.
he was an FBI hostage negotiator and he
Mm-hmm.
was a New York City cop.
Mm-hmm.
And so a 5 minute conversation with Chris Voss about something is like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'd
Right.
never
Right.
thought of
Mm-hmm.
I was having, this is a true story. I was having a lot of challenges with my wife on an occasional
Mhm.
basis because my wife is Serbian and there's a kind of
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
like the Russians, a
Mhm.
very, very like
Mhm.
in your
Passionate.
face kind of culture,
Mhm. Mhm.
passionate. Yeah. And instead of, instead of like escalating an argument on a Sunday morning, Chris said to me, instead of like when she says, da, 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 and the garden's not
Mhm.
in it, this, instead of like going, I did do this, he goes, no,
Mhm.
no, no. He said, just relax, take a breath
Mhm.
and say, seems like you got something on your mind.
Mhm.
Sounds like,
Mhm.
seems like you got something on your mind,
Mhm.
which is a very non-confrontational
Right.
way of
Mhm.
starting a conversation
Mhm.
about finding out
Mhm.
what's going on.
Mhm.
And that kind of
Mhm.
response to
Mhm.
a
Right.
huge emotional
Mhm.
output, it
Mhm.
changed my life, it
Mhm.
changed my relationship
Yeah.
with my wife.
Yeah. And that can happen in business. I mean, all of those things. And yeah, dropping the tone, so you're not yelling,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
And knowing that, okay, she might be really annoyed at how you loaded, she's talking to you about you cannot load the dishwasher, right?
Right.
And you're
Absolutely.
and that's not what
How did you
she's really
know?
upset about.
How did you know that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, oh my gosh, Will. This has been absolutely incredible. And I was looking obviously at your website. The pricing, gentlemen, the pricing
Mhm.
is very reasonable.
It is.
It tends to, we have evergreen content, so I don't want to give a specific price
Yeah.
because 5 years from now you might have raised
Uh-huh.
it, lowered it, whatever. But yeah, incredibly reasonable for what you're going to get. So please be sure to check that out. But tell us a little bit more. If someone joins, what's going to happen?
Well, when you go to the website,
Mm-hmm.
metal.men, very
Mm-hmm.
simple,
Mm-hmm.
tells you everything you need to know. You get a 3 week guest
Mm-hmm.
pass, and
Yeah,
you'll
and
get
there's that
to,
button, big red button.
there's the
Mm-hmm.
button, yeah. There are a number of things we do. There's
Mm-hmm.
a Saturday morning flagship event, which
Mm-hmm.
is on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
It starts at 8 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Pacific every Saturday morning,
Mm-hmm.
and we have three guest speakers. It's
Mm-hmm.
like TED, is like a mini TED for
Okay.
successful
Okay.
guys. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And Ken Wachowski, my host with the most, he's
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. Um, he's he does a segment called Ken's Brain, which is
Mm-hmm.
where he's always looking for interesting things and
Mm-hmm.
shares things with us. But during the week, we have about 35 expert sessions, which are
Ah.
member
Mm-hmm.
hosted sessions.
Mm-hmm.
They're about all kinds of things. We have a
Mm-hmm.
strong AI group.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We have, I mentioned already, the purpose mapping
Mm-hmm.
session with
Mm-hmm.
Craig Filek. These are all included in
Mm-hmm.
the membership subscription. We have real estate. We have a morning breathing session, so
Mm-hmm.
you can do conscious breathing every
Mm-hmm.
morning.
Mm-hmm.
We have a really successful session about music and music making. We have
Mm-hmm.
some very well-known musicians.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just one of them in the group.
Mm-hmm.
So the expert sessions
Mm-hmm.
are a key part of the
Mm-hmm.
connection that you have,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll get to meet the other guys.
Mm-hmm.
And because of time zones,
Mm-hmm.
some of the sessions you'll meet a bunch of guys from Australia
Right.
and
Mm-hmm.
the Far
Mm-hmm.
East, and then other
Mm-hmm.
times. We do something called the Foundry, which is a unique sort of men's personal development group,
Mm-hmm.
which is very popular. It's where you
Mm-hmm.
can talk about stuff in a
Mm-hmm.
confidential
Mm-hmm.
space. So that happens the first 3 weeks when you sign up and you'll get to meet us, and
Mm-hmm.
then you can apply for membership.
Mm-hmm.
And assuming you pass, most guys
Mm-hmm.
do, you'll be invited to become a
Mm-hmm.
member. And that's how
Ah,
it works.
I love it. I love it. And again, it's just easy peasy. Metal.men. That's it.
Yep,
Don't type
that's the
anything else,
website.
people. And we will have a link to that in the show
Yeah,
notes.
thank you.
This really has been such a fun conversation, and I would love to chat with you more. And so we'll have you back on again.
I'd love
But
that.
yeah, it's such fun, such fun. But do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, which is my conversation with Richard Branson, which has stayed with me, and that is during times of adversity, it's an extraordinary opportunity. Don't panic. We humans are good people, generally. Most humans are really good people and want to do the right thing internationally. Kindness is everywhere. And, we've got this probably won't age well over time, people listening to this in future, but we've been going through this big tariff. Oh, by the way, one of the things in metal is we don't talk politics ever. We can talk about geopolitics and how things affect you, but we don't get into bars and issues. It's a big part of the joy of the group. But there are tariffs and tariff conversations being driven by the current administration that are impacting everybody's business. And so there is opportunities for new ways of doing things, onshoring, offshoring, different countries. So in these kind of times, there's always keep your eyes open and your ears and your heart open for new ways of doing things.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. Well, I am Deb Creer. I've been having such a fun conversation with Will Henshall of METAL.MEN. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.